Hi, in this video, I'd like to walk you through my paper cutting process. I'll show you how I prepare a drawing, turn it into a paper cut, and then paint the artwork with black paint. As an example, I'll be using this illustration, which I sketched earlier this year. I start by transferring my rough sketch to a clean sheet of paper. And then I add and refine all the details that I plan to cut. Earlier in my paper cutting journey, I was only outlining the contours, but I learned that clearly defining the areas that have to be cut and those that have to stay results in a finer artwork. I am filling all the areas that have to stay with my pencil and leaving all the areas that have to be cut white. Doing so has a few major benefits. Firstly, and most importantly, this will allow you to make sure your overall art composition is right. At this stage, if you notice that your secondary elements take more attention than your centerpiece, you can easily add or remove any details. For example, I could decide to add more flowers or leaves if I think there's too much empty space around the girl. But if I would have spotted this while cutting paper, it might have been too late to fix, since the paper would have already been cut away. So a more precise drawing results in a cleaner and nicer paper cut. The second benefit of drawing all the details before cutting them is that this allows you to see and check if all the elements are well connected. You don't want to have too many big empty areas because doing so may make your paper cut imbalanced. If you need to make a very big cut, you should ideally divide it into multiple smaller parts. This way there will be multiple pieces of paper holding it together, and this will make your paper cut less fragile and more stable. Notice how I make sure to connect leaves and flowers in my artwork to the outer frame. Doing so will help me to keep my paper cut more balanced, and it won't sag when held horizontally. Another good example is girls' hair. I could have drawn straight, long locks of hair, but this would result in very big cuts. Instead, I purposely introduced some waves in her hair, which helps me to break one big cut into multiple small ones. This type of work is way easier to plan while drawing than when cutting. I never cut on my drawing straight away. I always make a copy first. When my drawing is ready, I take a photo of it and then I print a copy of it on my home printer. This way, if I make a mistake, I can easily start over again. Before starting any new paper cut, I always switch my paper knife blade. A sharper blade makes the cuts neater and more precise. It also makes it easier to cut, and so your hand gets less tired. I use 90-gram paper for my paper cuts. It is thin enough for me to cut, yet strong enough to hold the whole paper cut together. I use a paper knife with a slightly heavier handle compared to a typical X-acto knife. I find it more convenient to use, and so I can cut longer without getting my hands tired. When working on my artwork, I start with the centerpiece first, and then move to secondary elements. I also try to move from small shapes to big ones, and I make sure there is always plenty of paper left around the cuts. Doing so helps to minimize mistakes and leaves you room to fix them if you make one by accident. One more benefit of drawing everything before cutting it is that it helps you determine how thin or thick your cuts should be. The more paper you have around the cut, the less chance there is to damage the paper. Because I already planned and refined all my lines up front, I don't have to be worried that some will turn out thinner than others. This makes the paper cutting process much more relaxing. If you saw some of my paper artworks, you know that I like my paper cuts to be black when finished. I find paper cutting black paper rather difficult, so instead of cutting my artwork on black paper straight away, I cover my paper cuts with spray paint when they're ready. I use water-based acrylic paint and cover my paper cut with 2 coats of paint from both sides. This method allows me to cut on light paper and to have black paper cut as a finished artwork. And just like this, the paper cut is ready. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions about paper cutting, you can ask them in the comment section of this video and I'll answer as soon as I can. I've added a few extra links in the video description that I think you may find helpful. Happy crafting! Until next time.